In order to read music well and to do it accurately, you need to be quick at figuring out how long everything is in terms of beats. And these note beats quizzes help you on your way towards that goal. So what they do is they give you different durations, like whole notes, half notes, this type of thing. And then they ask you to tell how many beats they are. Currently, all we're going to do is use 4/4 or common time. And that means that this bottom 4 tells us that quarter notes will get one count or one beat. If things are larger than a quarter note, they'll get multiple beats. And if they're smaller than a quarter note, they'll get fractions, parts of beats. So let's start it out and see what that means. This is an eighth note. You can see by having this flag on top and the filled in note head. And an eighth is smaller than a quarter. In fact, we know an eighth is half the size of a quarter. So we go half because it's equal to 1/2 of a quarter note beat. This is a whole note, as I call it, donut whole note, and it's worth 4/4. I think of it like a dollar is 4/4, a whole dollar. And in common time, we need a whole note to be 4/4. So I go 1, 2, 3, or just click over here, 4. Now this one's a bit more complicated. It's a quarter note that has a dot next to it. And as we know, a dot adds half the value of whatever that note is. Well, half of a quarter note is an eighth note. And we have 2 eighth notes then normally to make this quarter note. So instead of having 2, or 2 halves, we're going to add one more half, or 3 eighth notes. What does that equal in beats? 1.5 beats then. This is a quarter note. Well, it's the same as the bottom there. 1 quarter note equals 1 count, so half note is equal to 2 quarter notes, so it's going to be 2 beats, 1 beat. This one, of course, is a half note again, but has a dot next to it. Again, the dot adds half the value of whatever it is. Well, what's half the value? Half of a half note is a quarter note. So this one's going to equal to the normal 2 quarter notes plus 1 more quarter note, or half its value, for a total of 3 quarter notes. I think of dotted things as always being equal to 3 of something. This is an eighth note. Again, it's half the size of a quarter, so we say 1/2 beat. Quarter note, half note. Again, this one here is 3 eighth notes, so it's 1.5 beats, not quite 2. A little bit bigger than a quarter note and smaller than a half note. This is again going to be 3 of something, but half the value that we're adding is a quarter note, so 3 quarter notes. This is a bit more difficult. It's an eighth note, so normally that would be half of a quarter note. But since it has a dot, we have to add half the value again. Well, what's half the value of an eighth? Half of an eighth, or an eighth times 1/2. We multiply the bottom parts, and 8 times 2 is 16. So a half of an eighth is a 16th. And that means that we only have 2 16ths to make up an eighth. But with this dot, we have 1 more 16th. I think of it like this, though. 4 16ths, okay, 4 of these, 4 16ths makes 1 quarter note. How many do I have? I have 3 of them. So I have 3 out of the 4 16ths that make a quarter note. 3 out of 4 16th notes. So it's 3 quarters of a quarter note. A little bit complex, I know. Whole note, 4. Quarter note, 1. Half note, 2. Whole note, get over there, 4. Half note. Again, 3 of something. What is it 3 of? Oh, half of this. 3 of whatever the half is. Half of this is an eighth note, so it's 3 eighth notes. That means it's bigger than 2 eighth notes, or a quarter. Right in between there and 2 full beats. It's 3 eighths, so 1.5 quarter notes.